Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is sponsored by Morgan Stanley's Thoughts on the Market. It can be difficult to stay up to date on the financial market in today's ever-changing environment. With so much commentary at any given moment, it's hard to cut through the noise to gain quality, actionable insights. Morgan Stanley is here to help with their podcast, Thoughts on the Market. Thoughts on the Market is your daily market snapshot covering trends across the global investment landscape and offering perspectives from Morgan Stanley's leading economists and strategists. It's one of the only daily podcasts providing real-time commentary from a financial institution on the day's biggest questions and topics. And with most episodes under 5 minutes long, market clarity can fit seamlessly into your daily routine. Staying informed has never been easier. Listen and subscribe to Thoughts on the Market wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, but chop down that's like PD hoes rise, and they rise again. From the front line to leading mates and friends. Oh, this is your season, time to take a stand. Hey, HeroMakers, legends spreading across the land. Yeah, it's your roof from Tassie, bouncing like a kid at a bunning sausage sizzle on a Saturday morning. Season 3's lit, laptop lifestyle, dad show, HeroMakers. Season is born from AI funnels to social selling grit, now it's hero making time. Strap in, this is it, yo. I've hopped Tokyo's back streets, cop the LA glow, bringing yarns from the road, mate. Watch the wisdom flow from the kitchen bench, hustle to the big global stage. We're handing you the keys, now it's time to turn the page. Oh, you heroes rise, and they rise again. From the front line to leading mates and friends. Oh, this is your season, time to take a stand. HeroMakers, been spreading across the land. I'm the pumped up platypus from Sunny Q, way more bounce than a kid who spotted the ice cream van. You see, two Wizzy dads, mate, bringing boom source seed, helping legends step up, take the driver's seat. We're not just here to yabba raw, spin ya a line. We're handing you the mic so your voice can shine. From Tassie to Tokyo, Goldie to Perth, HeroMakers worldwide, lifting leaders of worth. Jeff Rules got the coffee double shot, mate, I'm wide. They platypus at the pool party, still floating our tide. Jeff from barbecues to boardrooms, we bring the yarns and the tools, helping legends lead strong and break all the rules. See heroes rise, then they rise again. From the front line to leading mates and friends. This is your season, time to take a stand. HeroMakers, legends spreading across the land. Grab your brew, your notepad, and your crew. It's the laptop lifestyle dad show. HeroMakers season, bringing heroes out of you. Patty the rule, platypus bringing the tricks. HeroMakers podcast, your daily boom source fix. Heroes rise, then they rise again. From the front line to leading mates and friends. Oh, this is your season, time to take a stand. Hey, HeroMakers, legends spreading across the land. Heroes rise, then they rise again. From the front line to leading mates and friends. Oh, this is your season, time to take a stand. Hey, HeroMakers, legends spreading across the land.
Well, welcome, legends, to our season 3 of the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show. This is the Hero Makers season. So this season, we're shifting gears. You know, we're done with just learning tools. You know, sure, we'll still cover AI and social selling and content marketing and funnels and, you know, attraction marketing and all that gear. But this is time for us to level up. This is time for us to go deeper. You know, here we're exploring what it means to lead from identity, to build not just businesses, but build people, build movements, you know, to find the voice inside you, then to raise up others and to help them to find theirs. You know, hero makers aren't born in the spotlight. They're forged in the trenches of sacrifice. consistency, courage, and love. You know, they help make leaders who make other leaders. They help pass the mic on. They help to build legacy. So if you're ready to step up to rise beyond the hustle, beyond the noise, beyond just making profit and build something that endures, well, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. And today's guest, I've got Patrick Nugent here with me. We just had some fun with a little bit of tech issues there on Riverside. Then we jumped over to StreamYard. It wasn't working for us. So we come back to good old trusty Zoom. So, Patrick, it's good to meet you, mate. I'd like to just dive in and start here if this is okay. So, do a quick little introduction, but then let's dive in and share your story. So, Patrick, what's your story?
I appreciate you having us on, Jeff. Thank you very much. And yeah, I love the tech issues. Um, for me, I guess my quick story is that I'm a father of three young boys living on the Sunshine Coast in a beautiful little place called BOR in the hinterlands. Um, for me personally, I just love, I guess, all things development, all things I'm curious about life, especially men's mental health. And obviously just being the cornerstone or the pillar for my boys to be able to understand, I guess, what healthy masculinity is.
I love that.
It wasn't always like that. Uh, I was definitely one of your runabout kids. One of your runabout teenagers. I was the party goer, the attention seeker, kind of the one that always wanted to just sort of be in the limelight, as you
Mm,
mentioned, but for the wrong reasons. In a nutshell, obviously, life always has funny ways of showing you where you want to be without actually understanding it at the time consciously. And for me, I guess probably a huge pivotal time in my life is, when you become a father.
yeah,
It's nothing that any man can prepare for. But obviously, becoming a father to three young boys has taught me many lessons in my life up until this point of chatting with you today. None more than, I guess, humility and sort of the humbleness of a life of the past, that sort of that ego death and rebirth, and just shifting perspectives of what really matters in life and how we show up, not just for ourselves, but for our families, for the community, for our colleagues, our friends, the
yeah,
next generation. Um, and yeah, I've had many beautiful lessons up until this point, and I've achieved many beautiful things. But I think when all is said and done, and I look back on it, nothing more than fatherhood will probably top those.
yeah. Totally relate to that. You got three boys, so do I. So, how old are your boys?
Mine, we didn't plan it this way, but I love symmetry. They were 9, 6, and 3,
Wow,
so evenly 3
that's
years
so
apart.
cool. Yeah. Mine are 13,
Yeah,
12, and 9 now. So, so life is full of
yeah,
three boys at home, right? It's very full of fun of love, full of adventure, and so you talk about I love the term you used, healthy masculinity. What does that look like as a father, raising three amazing boys?
yeah. Great question. For me, I guess it's probably there's a lot of polarity in it because there's a lot of times where I do walk the talk, and then there's other times where I'll admit I've dropped the ball on countless occasions, and then I look myself in the mirror and go, well, if I'm trying to promote this, not just within my home front, but obviously in my communities that I run in that,
Mm,
like you got to shine the light back on yourself quite a lot as a father. You've really got to sit there and face off with the hard truths. And healthy masculinity for me is not to, I guess, perpetrate this whole facade of, money makes you, titles make you, status make you. They're all great things that can help to get you ahead of life, obviously,
sure.
but it's what you do with that that matters the most.
Yeah.
If we
Totally.
if we get the job, if we get all the money, if we get all that, that's great. But what are you going to do with it? What are you gonna How are you gonna use that to your benefit? And not just that, but also I guess looking inwards as well. Like my boys are, my two oldest boys are kind of at that stage now where they can understand what life is about and sort of start to understand who they are as individuals. And they're still very curious and understanding that. But I guess it's my job to start leading that path and leading by example in getting them to understand that they need to be their own unique selves. They don't need to follow the herd. They don't need to follow the pack, and giving them a chance to really stand on their own 2 feet and question the world, question who they are, question their own motives and what they do in the world, and also stand on their own 2 feet and back themselves, not be that person that, is a doormat or, or gets walked over in a healthy way, standing your ground, staying in your own values, but also even getting them to understand what that is. Sometimes I probably, and this has been the biggest lesson is I probably try and impart too much wisdom on them. And then I also need to understand they're 9 and 6.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're
Just
just kids
yeah, I'm
and they
guilty.
still just get to be kids.
Yeah,
They get to play up and be stupid and make mistakes and not understand the world or not take a lesson out of it. Because you know what? At 9 and 6, I wasn't sitting there going, "Oh, I wonder what the inner workings of my brain are because I did the wrong thing and I didn't put my washing away." Or it's
yeah.
like, no, you just didn't do it. Like, so it's a very hard space to
Dynamic.
sometimes
Yeah,
navigate as a
it's an
father.
interesting it's an interesting dynamic, and, I look at our boys, especially my oldest, 13, and, I've gotta stop and forget sometimes he's just a kid because he's more mature than a lot of 20-year-olds that I know, in that space. Like, we've traveled the world with our kids and, made sure that there is a deep connection as a father and son in that space. So some of the things that have helped us to thrive in that, when I wanna come back around to that, but I also I wanna dig into why Fathers for Change, like No Father Left Behind. Like, what was the big thing that really sparked you to step up and start, this whole conversation around Fathers for Change? I suppose, what was the catalyst moment in your life that said, "Right, I've gotta do this. If not me, who?" I look at my life and, I look at my early 20s, I look at my early 30s, it very much was the ego driven, it was the pride driven, it was the keep up with the Joneses, type sort of conversation, look at me. And then I had to have a few hard truths and a few, few things to stop me in my tracks to reevaluate myself and go deep into that messy transformational space and take a lot of ownership and accountability and responsibility for my own actions, and how I could be a better father, how I could be a better husband, how I could be a better man for society around the world. And, I had to be humbled. I had to have a lot of things in my journey that really humbled me on that space. And I'm sure you've got similar stories in there that have done the same thing by the sound of it. So, what was that journey like? And obviously, the end result of your journey is starting Fathers for Change. So, what was that catalyst moment that pulled you up and said, "Right, I've got to do this. I've got to start Fathers for Change."
Yeah, I've spoken in this journey a lot of times already, and I think it gets deeper and more emotional each time that I sit with it and I sort of reflect on it. You hit on a very good point there, Jeff, earlier on in sort of my early sort of 20s, sort of to mid 20s. I was always the joker, the partier, the guy that everyone knew that was just wanting all the attention, the forefront.
Mm,
And I was always searching for more, but I thought that I would find that in just being social, being out there, being the joker, the laugher, the one that made everyone happy and smiling. But deep down, it was very surface level. It was
yeah.
very surface level. I was almost running away from something I didn't even know existed or was needed in my life, which was, more maturity, more depth, more understanding of who I was and where I wanted to be. I was just out there partying and having fun and just being reckless,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
with my weekends, years, everything. That part of me that part of me defined who I was. So, like, to be honest, I never look back on that and regret it, because without that, I wouldn't be who I am now. It sounds cliche, but it's always that growth that, we look inwards on. For me, probably the journey started the moment that I decided to shift from where I used to live in my old life back up in the mines. So I was in the mines. I was in that community of like rugby league, mining, very blokey bloke, blue collar environments.
Yeah.
And again, it was very much derogatory, sort of, like speaking and a lot of the blokes just didn't really. I could see they weren't going anywhere. And weirdly enough, when I decided to make the move down to the Sunshine Coast, my whole life changed. I met my now wife down here only like a year or two later. And then I decided probably something that no real sort of mid 20-year-old would ever think of at the time, but I took a chance on love, which sounds very cheesy, but I'd only known my now wife for 1 year at the time, and she
Mm,
was moving overseas to China. And I actually decided at that point that I was going to move with her. I had no job. My parents weren't going to be there, no support networks. I didn't know the language, nothing. And I decided to go on a whim that it felt like the right thing to do. Fast forward another year, we'd only known each other for about a year and a half. We were engaged, married, and actually had our first child over in China, which for me was one of the most, again, humbling but very interesting experiences of my life. The reason why, I had no one around me. I was a first time father, and it wasn't actually expected at the time, like we were planning, but it sort of was
Yeah.
a bit more of a surprise. And at that point, I got very, very introverted because I didn't have any support network, and I was a stay at home dad living in a foreign country where I know no one. For me,
Yeah.
I guess what happened in that period was something that I wasn't ready for. I started to go into somewhat of a spiral. I loved it. I was so emotionally invested in my boy, but I was lost.
Mhm.
And when we came back 3 years, fast forwarding to Australia, pre China, I had a great group of mates, but they were mates that were just surface level mates when I look back on it now. Guys
Yeah.
that were living for the weekend, guys that were not didn't really have any other ambition outside of their 9 to 5. And look, honestly, nothing wrong with that.
But
I never
the
sat there and
work
judged them
hard,
after I came back.
very much the work hard, play hard sort of mantra and motto, right? It's like been there, done that. Yep, I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Living for the weekend, paycheck to paycheck, loving life, but that was it.
Mm,
And when I got back, I had this whole new perspective on life that I'm a dad now. Like I'm living after another human being. Like I've got a lot of responsibility. But I noticed that the mates that I did have at one point no longer fit into my circle. They didn't reach out. I didn't reach out to them, and we just drifted apart. And from that point, I again spiraled further down. I started to become really depressed. I started to have thoughts of, what have I done with my life? This is the wrong thing. I shouldn't have had a kid. I'm not ready. Am I going to be a good father? Like, can I even provide for another human if I can't even provide for myself? Like, what the hell have I done? And I started to reach out and look for like men's groups, just in general, like to see if there was something out there for me that was more than just drinking and partying. And I
yeah,
found a few responses and I started hanging out in these groups and I started to like it. I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. People are got a bit of ambition. They want to look around and there's this thing called breath work and meditation. You never heard of it. I'm like, cool, I might start looking into these things. And that was great for about a year or two. And then that collapsed. The gentleman that was running it, a great mentor of mine, Blaze Grinner, he was here on the coast, runs a lot of men's stuff. He went a different direction. And at that point, I was like, cool. During this period, I loved it. I was lit up every time coming and being surrounded by men that just wanted more out of life. They wanted to be a version of something bigger than themselves, but there wasn't anything left. And I was like, why can't fathers have this? Like, I have no mates that are anyone else other than, just these guys, but now they're not here anymore. I need to find some mates. Like, I always put it back to that analogy of when you're in the schoolyard and you were younger and, you're trying to make friends and it's really awkward. You walk up and you're like, will you be my best friend? And like, then
yeah,
they're
and
like,
it
no. And you're like, all like sad and sitting off to the side. And I'm
right, and
like, as a grown
it gets
man,
harder as you get older too, right? It gets really hard.
absolutely. I don't think there's anything scarier in my life than obviously as a grown man asking somebody else to be your mate. That sense of rejection or that sense of that fear of rejection from, maybe when you were
Well,
younger comes back up.
Patrick, I'm gonna jump in right here, right now, because I feel like this is a really awesome question to ask, mate. We've got so much in common. It's unfunny. It's not funny, and we'll have to dig into that one day. But mate, will you be my mate?
Absolutely, I will.
I love that. See,
Absolutely, I will.
as you get into this space, it does get a little bit easier because you get out of your own ego and your own pride. But it's not easy to start with, especially as a bloke here in Australia. I think Australian, the tall poppy syndrome, the toxic masculinity, the derogatory sort of communities as men grow up in. I grew up in the same environment. I left home at 14, and I got into the real rodeo, sort of cycles in that space, and then got into the real tradies, space as well. So it's an interesting environment to grow up as a young man in Australia, and yeah, very very superficial. So I definitely connect to that heart of it all. And I love
Absolutely.
what you're wanting to do here with Fathers for Change and bring back like bring back the tribal essence of what I think is to be a and I hate to use this word, but I can't think of a better word, to be a real man. You know, to a man who's okay with being vulnerable and have the softer side and being okay with being, there and having empathy and, those soft skills, but also at the same time, being the protector, being the provider for a family, being in that space. And I can't think of a better way to just bring it back to that tribal essence of, that hunter-gatherer days where men played a role as real men in that space, not this toxic
Mhm.
sort of masculinity. And so I wanna dig into this a little bit because I believe that the issues that we have in today's world are bred from, individualism, consumerism, and idolatry, in that space. So when you have these essence in part of in our culture, it can't help but breed, division and toxicity and hate in that space, right? Because it all just breeds that us versus them mentality. And I can see that the transformational journey that you've gone through, that I've personally gone through, that I know just about every other, man that I've spoken to in this space as a father has gone through in today's world. In this space, we have to get out of our own way. We have to learn how to fall in love with ourselves and fall in love with something bigger than ourselves, and essentially then learn to fall in love with other community, like our neighbors, in that space. And that takes a very messy, hard, internal transformational journey to figure out a few things along the way in that space. But then when you do figure it out, this is what Joseph Campbell talks about in his hero journey concept in his book, The Hero's Journey. When you do figure this out and you just have a heart to want to now go to serve the greater good, serve the community. And in that space, charity happens in participation to that service. Can you describe what sort of happened in your journey and the wisdom that you've picked up along that space and unpack that a bit deeper from your perspective?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, I think that to continue on from previously before, I think probably when I first picked up the idea of creating Fathers for Change, it was still just an idea of like more of a social catch up to be able to connect in and make mates with dads. What I very quickly began to learn was that there are so many men out there, so many fathers that were still out there that were hurting,
Mm,
so many men and fathers out there that just didn't even know this existed or weren't open to this opportunity
yeah.
based upon their own emotional wounding, their own
Right.
limiting beliefs, whatever it may be. And like, I can't speak for them, but this is through my own personal experience. And you hit on a really good point is that when we are in these spaces and we're facilitating or whatever you want to label it as, there's that saying, when you teach, you get to learn twice. And for me, I think it's an amazing thing that I've grown so much as an individual over the last 5 years. If, I look back on my time and I'm like, I'm no longer the person I was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I've constantly been evolving as I've moved into this space and seeing, I guess, the challenges that I've faced every time I've gone through another year has really allowed me to understand just how much, I guess, growth that I've brought not only to the space, but to myself, to my family, to the community, everyone, like you mentioned. I've had countless times where I wanted to throw it in,
Yeah, of course.
like countless times where I didn't think that the value was there, that I'm basically pushing,
Well, look, I think if you
friggin' shit
told
up
me you hadn't,
a hill.
right? If you hadn't told me, like, you didn't wanna throw it in, you'd be essentially bullshitting and you lie about everything else as well. So I get that.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And look, one thing that I've probably noticed more than enough, in my journey of the 5 years, you mentioned about the whole thing with, men and the paradigm of like, sort of still needing to understand themselves or, the consumerism and all that type of stuff. One thing that, and, this might be going off topic a little bit, but one thing I've noticed, and it's very interesting to still see even to this day with how much more widely accepted men's mental health movements are, or communities, or growth, and being vulnerable and sharing and opening up and crying in front of your kids and whatever it looks like. Even to this day, I still find that there's a resistance there from
Okay.
men, even when I share these spaces.
Yeah.
What I find refreshing is, though, that as a ripple effect of sharing it, and maybe not, having that impact initially with the men, is that those around them are seeing the value in it.
Yep.
Those around them, like their partners, their wives, their friends, their colleagues, perfect strangers. When I promote what I do out to the community, I'd say largely around 90% of it is actually not from the men that
Mm.
actually suggest the men to do it. And I still find that extremely
That's
interesting
fascinating.
that
Yeah.
as men, we still have that sort of, that childlike, sort of worry of what people are going to think, or,
Yeah.
we're sort of like, we're caught in our own trap of, our mind. And don't get me wrong, there is that invisible growth that I do see quite a lot, where I might have a random guy or a father that 3 years down the track will come to his first meetup.
Yeah, yeah.
2 years down the track will
But I
send me a random message.
It's what I call the silent stalkers, right? I've been in this online space for about 17 years now, and I've seen so many people who they've never interacted on a comment, they've never engaged on a post, they've just watched you from afar until they get to a point in their life where something happens, whatever it is, and there's no longer just a want or an urge or a yearning, it's a need.
Mm.
And so like and then they reach out and then they take action. I've seen people take 10 years to make that move. But
Yeah.
they watched you from afar in that space, and it's interesting, you talk about this and you touch on this about leading with creating a safe space for people to feel heard, seen, valued, known, and essentially loved. Blokes wanna be
Mhm.
loved as well, right? We wanna be known, we wanna be seen, we wanna be heard, and that's, I think, the biggest thing here in Australia, especially a lot of blokes. I can even think back to my own father, for example, who, have grown, and I think we've got to call it out, right? The enemy to this story is the tall poppy syndrome that we face in Australia. It's the thing that's really sort of preventing men from showing their softer side, their more vulnerable side. They feel like they've got to have the stiff upper lip, the cowboy up type sort of conversation, and you
Yeah.
can't, to show any of this other side is to be weak. And
Yeah.
then when other men start to show this other side, then the tall poppy syndrome really kicks in, and you're essentially persecuted and attacked to make you look even weaker. And
Yeah.
and I think that prevents a lot of men from wanting to even step into this space and that conversation. Do you see that on your end too?
Yeah, I was actually going to lead in with a perfect example, or two actually, that I seen. I won't name the names for obviously privacy reasons, but there's actually a very sort of influential men's work facilitator, and that lives sort of within the general area. And through a lot of the offerings that he's put out, he obviously promotes quite a lot of like retreats and things like that. What I've noticed more than I would I'm just baffled by it. I'm kind of almost lost for words. Is that a lot of the times when he's promoted this stuff, you'll find one person will come on there and be the beginner of this tall poppy syndrome. They'll basically stoke the fire. There'll be a
Mhm.
lot of positivity, a lot of
Yeah, I'll spark
um,
I'll spark the flame for the conversation.
yeah, there'll be a lot of happiness and support and everything. And there'll be that one person that just literally is afraid for change. Maybe, has been hurt by this before, doesn't have trust in males, whatever it looks like for their own
Yeah.
childhood, or something that's been triggered in them. And everyone will jump on the back of it, literally. And like some of the stuff that I've seen in there is extremely toxic, very
Yeah.
derogatory, very like, sort of that shaming nature, trying to like bring them down to make themselves feel better in that sort of way that they always do that. And it's just it blows my mind,
Yeah.
because I mean, like, quite frankly, even in the work that I've done, I have an example where there was a guy who actually commented on one of my posts and said to me, "Is like, I find it really sad that there's so many of these opportunities out there, but there's none out there for men of my age, a younger bloke."
Mm.
And it wasn't so much a hateful comment, but I've never received something like that on any of my sort of promotional sort of posts or anything like that. And I took a moment to pause, and I'm like, this guy's hurting.
Mm,
Like this guy, I have a feeling like this guy really just needs somebody to listen to him,
yeah.
not attack him, not get their back up,
Yeah,
not
just
let
just
their
just feel
ego take
seen.
control
Just feel seen, feel
and
heard.
feel seen.
Yeah.
And I sat there for a moment and I responded to him. And the response I got back was the exact reason why I got into this work and created something like Fathers for Change. He was like, honestly, thank you so much. What I did is I actually removed my ego. He wasn't a father, but I actually mentioned 4 or 5 other men's communities on the coast. I tagged them, I self promoted them, and I said, mate, reach out to any of these. The men would be more than happy to have you along. Honestly, I think these places are what you need in your life right now.
I love that.
And the response he said was like, thank you so much. He's like, honestly, I didn't expect to get a response like that. I've never heard anyone sort of like respond in that way. Honestly, I'm going to check them out next weekend. Love it. Thank you so much.
And that's how we make a stand for people, and we basically stand for, well, essentially, this is the hill that we're gonna die on, and, to create that change, to create that transformation, to bring in that positive side of the conversation, and sometimes it just takes us, for it to take a step back and to get and I love that, you get out of your own
Mm.
ego, get out of your own way, get out of your own pride, and put them first to bring in the empathy to the conversation. I've had to do that myself on my own journey. I'm loving this conversation. We're gonna have definitely a part 2 to this, but, if let's just unpack this, and I think we'll look at wrapping up and closing on this. In 5 years' time, you're doing what you do. I love what you're doing too, and you're creating that change for fathers. You're bringing in that space for no man to be left behind. What would you like to see the world around you? How would you like to see the world transform in the next 5 years? Like, what are the impact? What's the legacy sort of conversation that you'd like to bring into and to look at, amplifying and leaving behind when you're no longer here?
Yeah. And this is something I've had to sit with a couple of times. And I think it's going to change every time I do as we grow.
You
But
get deeper and you get more mature in it.
absolutely, like at this point in time, I feel like this is the precipice of the next season of my journey. Just recently now launched a second meetup location. So we are expanding, which I think is amazing. Like this has taken a long time for me to be able to actually put together as well. And for me, I guess my vision over the next 5 years is one, obviously to normalize these spaces as just a thing of just today's community. I want to have as many of these around not only the Sunshine Coast, but Queensland, Australia. Like the vision is huge. And the reason why I say that is because there's still so many men that either one, don't know they exist, two, are restricted through maybe the location or other means or things like that, that they can't get to these bigger events, maybe that are retreats or things that are of a monetary nature. And I don't think any man should miss out.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think, I think every man should be given the opportunity, whether or not they take that on board themselves is a different story. But like we mentioned and touch base on earlier on, each man will find that space when it's needed the most.
Yeah.
For me as a father, when all is said and done, I love this space. I love what it provides. But for me, I guess probably the biggest thing I've sat with is that when all is said and done, the men that I inspire, the men that I reach, the community I reach is amazing. But it's my 3 boys deep down that I want them to see that when they're finished, they've got, that sort of, they've got the ability to look back and be like, we were so proud of what dad created. We were so proud of what he was able to achieve. And I want to instill the values and the commitment and the drive and the vision of what I've got in them. Not that I'm wanting them to follow in my footsteps, but I want that to be able to be a stepping stone for how they show up in the world,
Part of the
how
conversation.
they move through things.
Yeah.
And I want them to be able to, feel as though they can be, a voice or a permission slip for others to follow in that way as well. And I want all the other fathers in the communities around, Queensland, Sunshine Coast, wherever. I want to be able to build not just meetups, but I want to have the ability to have spaces where I can connect in with, maybe running local workshops or have online resources or things like that, where for those men that don't feel comfortable to show up in person, they aren't left out either. as I mentioned with my, my mantra of running this, no father left behind. I don't take that lightly. Like, obviously, we have a lot of banter. We joke around. We have fun. We throw out some f bombs.
Yeah, of course.
We have a bit of banter. We go to the, go watch a game of footy or whatever. But when all is said and done, I just want to create something that's far bigger than myself and be a part of the bigger picture of the community. And just know that basically I've at least, even if I was to leave this world and only touch one father or only make change for one father, I still think that'd be a huge success. But my goals are so much more lofty than that. I want to make sure every father knows that they have a voice, that their voice is worth hearing, and that at the end of the day, no man's value is more important than another's.
That's
Like
it.
everyone, yeah, every man has value in this world, and there's just some men that need that little push in the right direction to know that the value is there. So yeah, off the recent experience of something that happened in my life that really made me reflect on things with the passing of a family member, it's really made me reevaluate that, even the happiest people or even the people you think are doing well in life, you really need to check in more on them.
Yeah, of course. Look at Robin Williams, one of the world's greatest comedians of the world, and deep down he was dying and he committed suicide. A lot of men especially are very good at putting on a brave face for
Yeah.
to not let, their loved ones see it, to not let that see it. Deep down they're hurting. I've got
Yeah.
story after story after story where I've lost, quite a few influential men in my life, that space of growing up that, they've committed suicide. And,
Yeah.
I think that's what you're doing, mate, is it's a beautiful heart to help even prevent that conversation for even starting, but creating that brothership, creating that mateship, in that space, creating community to help men feel seen, heard, valued, known, and ultimately loved, at that space.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me.
Yeah, there's a
I
really
think that
powerful
over the
book
last
by
five,
sorry, where you go?
oh, and I was just going to say, over the last 5 years, for the first 4 years, I ran the meetups every single weekend for 4 years straight. And there's been times where I've sat back and looked at it and gone, oh, am I really doing enough? Am I really creating enough value in the community? Is this really enough? Because I've just got very high standards for myself. It's
Yeah.
just who I am. But then I look back and I'm like, there is a lot of men out there that would love to be in this position where they've felt the courage to step into this space and
Yeah.
take that leap.
I also think
But,
sometimes when you're
so
starting out, it's as it's yes, it's about service, yes, it's about other people, but sometimes we as leaders need to mature and grow and go in that space. So sometimes it's just as much for us as it is for them to be able
absolutely.
to step up to that plate. Mate, we're running out of time here, so there's a really great book that I would love you to go read if you haven't read it already. It's by Brené Brown. It's called Atlas of the Heart, and I think that would actually really help strengthen the mission and help you equip you in a more powerful way with everything you're doing.
Amazing.
Yeah. I actually love to just sort of give you space here as well. So, like, if you had the opportunity here to sort of ask for, for one thing, like ask for support, ask for help, or whatever would that be to help you to facilitate this conversation, to help you to move the needle forward faster, what would that ask be? What's something that our community could potentially maybe help you out with?
I would think personally, just to quickly touch base on what I mentioned before, I'm one man. I've never thought of Fathers to Change community as a one man band or a lone wolf pack. However, I've found it more challenging than not to be able to actually have enough men or enough fathers in my corner to really grow this space to where I want it to get to. Not
Mm,
because I need it to look a certain way, but because I know that the impact it creates. So,
mm,
my question out there to the men that listen to this, to the fathers that listen to this, is that if you feel called, if you've resonated with what we've spoken into, if you feel like you've wanted to get into a space like this and you've just been afraid to maybe take that leap or you didn't know it existed, I'd be very happy to have a chat with any man, any father out there that even just wants to know a little bit more about what we do, wants to connect in personally, or wants to maybe take an opportunity on to even open up a new location, or wants to just help out in some way, shape, or form to reach out to me. Um,
mm.
to jump into our Fathers for Change community online, there's a private online group. Maybe jump in there and check it out if you feel like it might be something for you. And just know that it's always going to be a free space. Like I don't want, like I said, any man to have to miss out. And if you want to look into it, just check it out. There's no harm in it. You don't have to be in there trying to share, or vulnerably and feeling the edges and everything. You can just go in there and be a part of something.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of men or fathers sometimes want. They just want to feel like a part of a tribe or a brotherhood. And
Yeah,
maybe
just wanna
that's enough
belong. You wanna belong.
sometimes.
Yeah, just wanna belong. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if there's any other people out there, whether it's wives, mothers, fathers, husbands, whoever it be, the bigger community, if you know of somebody that maybe can't see this, doesn't have social media, isn't into that stuff, let them know about it. Let them know about what we're doing with Fathers for Change and the movement. And, just let them know that if they are ever on the Sunshine Coast or when we expand, come down. Like, you're going to be accepted. You're going to be, welcome with open arms. We're not there to friggin', judge people or make them feel awkward or question who you are or no. It's every man from every walk of life. Every father is welcome. So yeah, basically just at the end of the day, to sum it up, please just get the message out there for fathers and let's just work towards making more awareness for men's mental health.
Love that, mate. And we'll make sure all of those details are in the show notes below. And this will the beauty about these interviews is they're timeless. Someone could be listening down the road, 3 years, 5 years down the road as you grow in that space and still reach out to you. So I love that about this. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to today's episode with Patrick Nugent. Make sure that you subscribe to the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And this podcast is also proudly brought to you in partnership with the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. So thank you very much for your time, legends. We'll see you on the next episode, and bye for now.